Hello, everyone. We're ready to get started. Hi, I'm Joe Ryan with Transcendence IT, and I'm also your host for today's event. First off, on the behalf of our sponsor BMC and our company Transcendence IT, we want to thank you for attending our webinar where we're going to show you 4 great tips on how you can drive efficiency and reliability into your middleware operations. What we'll demonstrate are 4 different use cases and how you can use our middleware management solution to, number 1, simplify your middleware environment. Number 2, eliminate some of the meetings you have, like your war room meetings, late night interruptions, which I'm sure you'll be happy about. Number 3, we'll show you how you can automate the remediation of issues before they become big problems in your company. And then number 4, we'll show you how to delegate by using a very easy-to-use self-service portal that has full security and audit control. So with these 4 tips we're going to show you how you can regain some time back into your schedule so you can work on more fun, strategic projects as well as grab more sleep. Next, I'd like to take you through our agenda. The first thing we'll do is we'll introduce you to our team. We'll talk about the customer use cases and the 4 tips that we have to resolve those use cases. After each tip, we'll open it up for a 5-minute Q&A to answer any questions you might have. And then at the end, we'll talk about next steps, some services that we offer that can help you optimize your middleware environment. So let me introduce our team to you. We have George Klarman. George is the owner and founder of our company, started the company in 2013. George started his career as a middleware developer at Solomon Brothers. Then he moved on to MQ Software, who is the original developer of the software you're seeing today. MQ Software got purchased by BMC. George stayed on at BMC and became a solution architect for the professional services group and has implemented this in a lot of complex environments. Next, we have Barry Cartmel. Barry is an ex-IBMer. At IBM, he was responsible for training and implementing MQ series. Next, we have Joshua Klarman. Joshua is a director of our innovation labs and is responsible for many of our automations and innovations we've made with this product. Both Barry and Joshua are going to take you through the customer use cases and show you the tips on how to resolve those. George is going to start off the presentation with the customer story, explaining who the Acme Corporation was, and he'll take you through their situation before they implemented the BMC middleware management tool. George?
Thanks for the introduction, Joe. My name is George Klarman, and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to take you through some real-world use cases in the middleware shop at the fictitious Acme Corporation. Acme is an international payment services provider who's been struggling with their middleware applications for some time now. They're losing customers, missing SLAs, while at the same time, their application releases and data center migrations are experiencing delays. The situation is mainly because Fred and Barney, Acme's middleware administrators, are overloaded. Fred and Barney work 50 to 60 hours a week and they still cannot keep up. They're constantly fixing production issues, being bombarded with requests by the application's development and data center migration teams. The priorities are changing daily and the applications are running on a release of middleware that is over 7 years old. Middleware issues have reached a percolating point and have been escalated by the business and the application teams to the CEO of Acme, who is steamed. He lets the CIO know they are losing money, plus they just landed a huge government contract and the release of the new government payment application is behind schedule due to the delayed responses from the middleware team. He said the situation requires rectification ASAP or else. You don't want to know what comes next. Then the CIO lays down the ultimatum on Fred and Barney's boss's boss, the Director of Operations and Infrastructure. If you cannot get your middleware systems under control, I will find somebody who can. As you know, all good things roll downhill. That's right. This lands right in the middle of Fred and Barney's court. Barney recalled a demonstration of BMC middleware management that provided some great middleware monitoring, administration, and configuration capabilities. Remembers it looked like something that could help them get ahead of their day-to-day work that just keeps piling up. He mentioned it to their manager, but he was too busy fighting fires at the time to look at it. Plus, there was not any budget for such a luxury item of this type. Well, now it's a different story. Fred and Barney called Transcendence IT, explained their situation, set up a demo with their manager and the director of operations and infrastructure. Soon after the demo, they installed the product and got started. Now for a quick disclaimer. Portions of this webinar have been re-recorded to provide an enhanced experience for the attendee. The floor will be open for Q&A after the presentation of each use case. The names and company used in these stories are fictitious to protect the innocent, but the stories are true. Now it's time to hand off the webinar to Josh Klarman and Barry Cartmill, who will take you through the Acme Corporation middleware turnaround story.
Hi, this is Joshua Klarman, and I will be presenting the first tip on automated remediation. At Acme Corporation, Fred and Barney are the MQ admins in charge of the MQ and IIB infrastructure behind a set of international payment applications. That means that they have payment messages moving through their MQ environment at all hours of a given day. If a problem occurs within the application's transactions at midnight, then Fred and Barney receive calls, informing them they have problems to fix. Acme Corporation has recently been working on migrating their data centers as well. The guys hired to do the migration have been meeting regularly with all the various application groups, Fred and Barney's included. Unfortunately, the migration teams aren't necessarily the most experienced, and lately, many application owners have had issues with network connection failures. Fred and Barney don't like hearing these stories. They are so busy keeping up with their usual tasks and meetings that they haven't even started building out new queue managers for the migration. As of yet, nothing has occurred that is particularly impactful to Fred and Barney's environment, so they've been able to sleep at night. Then comes Wednesday night. At 10 past midnight, both Fred and Barney receive calls, waking them up in the middle of the night, and the voice on the other end of the line is their manager, who informs them that the international payment applications are down. A customer in Japan has submitted several payments, yet none of them have been recognized by the application nor their bank. Let's see how Fred and Barney deal with the situation. Fred ends up being the first person to log into the environment. He looks through his queues and channels and finds that several queues have messages piling up and several channels are paused, inactive, and stopped. It takes him 2 hours to find the channel pairs down that originally caused the issue. After fixing the problems and assessing the situation, Fred and Barney determined that the issue was caused by a network disconnection on the processing side of the application. In the 2 hours it took to solve the problem, Acme's customers in Japan tried to submit 120 payments, none of which went through when they were supposed to. The customers made sure to inform Acme of their disappointment and that if such a thing happened again, they would have to consider seeking other service providers. With BMC's middleware management, Fred and Barney are capable of approaching the problems in a different, less painful way. First, their entire MQ environment for the International Payment app is visually displayed as a dashboard, allowing them to pinpoint where issues are occurring without having to search through Queue Manager's queues and channels. Second, middleware management has the event service, which triggers events to run whenever certain issues occur. Now, Fred and Barney know what issues arise from network failure, so they can make events to notify them when these issues occur. Let's see what happens when the network goes down again. This time, Fred and Barney have a dashboard that allows them to directly pinpoint where issues are occurring. We see that there are some problems with the requesting channels and one of the transmit queues going to the processing side of the application. That gives Fred and Barney a good idea of where to start when this problem occurs. Even with dashboards, though, Fred and Barney need to know that the problems are occurring somehow, and that can be done with the middleware monitor's event service. If you can see, there are console alerts that are occurring at the bottom of the screen. Those could just as well be emails or text messages being sent out to Fred and Barney, which would notify them that there is a problem that they need to attend to. When Fred and Barney are alerted to the issue, they see the dashboard and know exactly what they need to do. It seems that there is a problem with the channels. One of them is stopped and it needs to be restarted. And so they go into the middleware administrator tool and do that directly. Once the problem is fixed, Fred and Barney could go back to sleep and not have to worry about this tomorrow. It's a wonderful thing that Fred and Barney now have a tool that allows them to preempt any issue that might occur in their middleware environment. But these connection issues have been happening quite frequently, and Fred and Barney still don't like to wake up in the middle of the night to solve their problems. Because Fred and Barney want to sleep at night, they decide to take the middleware management tool to the next level and implement self-remediating automation. While the event service of the middleware monitor tool can alert users when issues arise, it can also launch executables, perform command line actions, and dynamically pass in arguments to those commands. Fred and Barney decide to make an automation event that triggers when a queue reaches 80% of its max depth. From there, the event initiates a script that increases the queue's max depth and traverses to the channels associated with the queue to make sure that both are in the running state. Now, the script could be written in MQSC, but instead, Fred and Barney decided to use the Middleware Administrator JavaScript API because it is machine independent and all changes are included in the Middleware Administrator log. This means that if Fred and Barney's remediation happened while they were sleeping, then they can check the Middleware Administrator audit log the next day to see what changes occurred as a result of their automation. Let's see how this plays out with another network connection failure. As we can see from Fred and Barney's dashboard, the same problem as before has occurred. If we just wait a bit for the event conditions to be met, we see that the environment turns green upon the event's execution. We can now also verify the changes that took place within the Middleware Administrator audit log. Each change made by Fred and Barney's automation is listed in the audit log, showing both the new and old values for the properties that were changed. In this case study, we witnessed three scenarios. First, we saw what would happen when one of Acme's customers experienced issues with their international payment app and how the time to resolution of these issues would significantly impact the company's relationship. After that, we saw how these pains could be decimated when MQ admins Fred and Barney used the Middleware Monitor event service and dashboarding capabilities. Despite the new, incredibly fast mean time to resolution, we saw that Fred and Barney still had to wake up in the middle of the night to fix their problems. Finally, to help them get a full night's rest, Fred and Barney decided to take full advantage of the Middleware Monitor event service and the Middleware Administrator JavaScript API to implement automated remediation. This retained a short mean time to resolution, but did not require Fred and Barney to interrupt their sleep.
Hello, my name is Barry Cartmill. I'm currently working as a principal consultant at Transcendence IT. It's my pleasure today to discuss with you the second tip. Here we're going to focus on providing secure and centralized self-service through configuring the BMC middleware management offering. The intent here is to allow the right people with access to the right IBM MQ resources with the right permissions so they can do their jobs. I'd like to set this in the context of the Acme company. Part of the problem is that there's a large and growing number of requests for just basic status information regarding messages and queues. Barney has the major responsibility in responding to these requests. It's gotten to the point where he's spending over half of his time dealing with them. There's more complaints lately regarding the timeliness of the responses. It usually takes hours, but sometimes it can take a day or longer. Outside of the department, there's limited IBM MQ expertise. There are no officially supported IBM MQ system management tools. During the initial phone call with Transcendence IT, Fred discussed a situation where there was a stress test scheduled in the system test environment for the new version of a critical payment application. The new payment application failed. A war room was established with a lot of people involved. After a few hours, it was determined that the application failed because it could not access a queue which had been deleted. Barney and Fred spent several hours trying to determine who deleted the queue and precisely when. The project schedule for the new version of the payment application moved out a week. Fred also missed an important deadline for a key deliverable for a very important data center consolidation project. This resulted in further pressure on Fred and Barney. It was one of the events that eventually led to the purchase of BMM and the services around it several months ago. Soon after the BMM tool was made available, Fred defined a number of access points by creating projects within the tool. 3 of those projects were created for the effort to develop the new version of the payment application. The development project was defined so that the developers could access the queues associated with the payment application in the development environment. A second project was defined so the testers could access the queues defined to the queue managers in the 2 test environments. Here the testers would be able to examine the messages and the queues they were on. A third project was defined for Harry, the solution architect, who was essentially granted administrative authority so he could manipulate both messages and queues, including the creation and deletion of them, on all of the non-production environments, including the development queue manager and the 2 test queue managers. Earlier this week, a stress test involving the new version of the development application was scheduled to run on the system test environment. The test failed with an indication in the application log that a queue could not be accessed by the application that should have been defined to the system test queue manager. To address the situation, Richard logged in to the BMM tool, examined the list of queues that were defined for the payment application, and quickly saw that the pay request queue was missing. He then attempted to create the queue, but was unsuccessful, getting a return that access was denied, indicating he didn't have the privilege to create the queue. He then contacted Harry, explained the situation to him. Harry logged into the tool where he accessed the System Test Queue Manager, examined the queues, verified that the pay request queue was not defined, attempted to define it, and was successful. Working together, Richard and Harry, without contacting anyone else, including Fred or Barney, was able to quickly diagnose and remediate the situation in a matter of minutes, in this case roughly 3, so that the scheduled test in the system test environment involving the application could be completed on schedule. Anticipating the question that would be asked the following day as to what happened with the queue, Harry accessed the tool's audit log through the interface, limiting the time frame so he could see just the recent activities, where he saw earlier that the Acme Pay Request queue had been deleted on the System Test Queue Manager with his user ID that was defined to the tool. Then Harry remembered that Tom, the developer, had made a request to delete that queue on the development environment in order to test accessing the alternate queue. He deleted the queue on the wrong queue manager. In this way, Harry was quickly able to identify what had happened to the queue, when it happened, and who had deleted the queue.
Hi, this is Josh again. Let's talk about what we saw in this situation. In the first scenario, we had a peek at Harry's application that was under development. A critical queue for testing was deleted, but it took a long time to figure out the problem, and even then, it was very challenging to figure out who deleted the queue. As a result, the application was delayed, and an important deadline was missed. In the second scenario, the MQ admin, Fred, and the application architect, Harry, now have BMC middleware management. With BMC middleware management, the problem is quickly identified via the user interface and confirmed in the audit log. This allows Harry to quickly amend the situation. Resolution occurs in a matter of minutes as opposed to hours, there's no war room, and the root cause is easily determined. Hi, this is Josh here again, and you've made it to the third tip. Open your ServiceNow instance from BMC Middleware Management. In our first tip, we witnessed Fred and Barney implement automated remediation via the event service and the Middleware Administrator API. This is a good practice for reducing workload from common tasks. Some issues arise, however, that go beyond the scope of automated capabilities. For instance, if a server goes down, or the network experiences non-temporary failures, issues will be identified in the middleware environments, but solutions must be implemented outside of the middleware environments. As such, there are some events in middleware management that justify opening incidents in Acme's ITSM system. Fred and Barney decide they want to map out events that justify the opening of ITSM tickets and use the event service to do so. Ideally, they would like to have it so ITSM tickets for middleware issues are first opened by the middleware team. Since they don't yet have all these events mapped out, they often are only alerted to issues in their environment from tickets that have been routed to them over the span of several hours or days. This affects their mean time to resolution and paints them into a corner with their SLAs. By default, the event service allows users to send events over to HP OpenView, TrueSite Operations Manager, and the Tivoli Event Console. But there isn't an option to send them into Acme's ServiceNow ITSM system. For now, Fred and Barney must resort to setting up email alerts that tell them when an incident level event has triggered so that they may log into ServiceNow to create a ticket. While this method cuts a significant amount of time away from determining the origination of issues, it still burdens our MQ admins with having to manually create incidents in ServiceNow, which requires their constant attention. Therefore, if Fred and Barney are distracted or working on other projects, they may neglect to open tickets in a timely manner. After consulting with their friends over at Transcendence IT, Fred and Barney learned that there is, indeed, a way that they can open up ITSM tickets from an event in BMC Middleware Management. Here, there are two elements to implementing the solution. First, Fred and Barney will need to make an event capable of executing a JavaScript. Second, that script will have to call on the ServiceNow REST API in order to post and patch incident records to ITSM. And with help from Transcendence IT and a little fiddling around with events, Fred and Barney implement a set of events that open tickets in ServiceNow when triggered and close the tickets once the event triggers are cleared and the issue is resolved. Let's see one of these events play out in real time. As Fred and Barney are working, they both receive an email indicating that a ServiceNow incident has been opened and assigned to them. The incident states that the CSQ1 queue manager is unavailable. The comments on the ticket contain a link that takes them directly to the queue manager in question within the Middleware Management Console. In the Management Console, Barney verifies that the queue manager is unresponsive and immediately tries to resolve the issue. He ends up being unsuccessful, realizing that the server is likely shut down. In ServiceNow, Barney leaves a comment stating as much, and escalates the ticket to the system administrator in charge of the machine hosting the queue manager. Once Barney confirms the server is started and running, he uses middleware management to start the queue manager back up. Checking on the ticket in ServiceNow, he sees it is now closed because the event service sent a message indicating that the issue is now resolved. Let's review what we covered in this tip. Prior to using automated ticketing with the BMM event service, the MQ team were notified of ITSM incidents dependent on their middleware only after a long routing process that usually took several hours. This would pressure the MQ admins to resolve issues in a rushed manner in order to avoid SLA fees. With the new implementation of automated ticketing, the EMQ admins reduce their mean time to resolution so that it is safely under 1 hour. This permits ample time to provide full solutions, reduces the need for manual ticket creation, and gives Fred and Barney more freedom in the organization of their workdays.
Hi, this is Barry again. 2 weeks prior to the deployment of the new payment application, Acme won a large contract with the U.S. federal government to provide services. A special version of the payment application was being developed for the federal government contract. This application was based on the new payment application, which was nearly ready for production deployment. The availability of the government payment application was stated to be 1 month from today in the contract with the federal government. The project is currently 2 weeks behind schedule. Fred and Barney need to quickly create the IBM EMQ object definitions in 4 recently created queue managers to support the government payment application. This will include defining all the payment application queues required to support the new application. They assigned the task to an intern, Betty, from the local college who started 3 weeks ago. She just completed the BMC middleware management classes. Betty had no experience with IBM EMQ prior to attending the class. As usual, management wants this done yesterday. The application developers and testers are all chopping at the bit to access the government payment queue managers. Fred gives the assignment to define the queues on the 4 queue managers to support the government payment application to Betty. After discussing it, Betty returns to her office where she logs into the administrative component of BMC middleware management. She is going to take the queues that are defined on the Acme Pay Development Queue Manager supporting the current effort for the new version of the payment application, copy those definitions over to the 4 queue managers that have been recently created to support the government payment application. She is going to access the current payment development queue manager, looking at the local queues to get the definitions to all 4 queue managers at once, all 29 definitions she sees. She's going to use the export-import function, specifying exporting from the payment development queue manager to the 4 government queue managers. She's going to be specifying queues. She is only going to define the ones that have Acme_Pay. She's going to place a tag on them, which will make it easier for her to access them in an isolated fashion. Files created, executed, and completed. Betty then looks into the status section of the display where she sees that the queue managers have been modified. Betty can further verify this by looking into the audit log where she can see the definitions have been imported in and the attributes of the object that is being created, that is the local queues, in this case the pay test. Betty then accesses the test system, looks for the local queues and sees they are there. Then if she examines the attributes of some of the queues, she could see that it was recently created. We have now copied over from the development system 29 definitions to the 4 queue managers that are going to be supporting the development of the government pay application. In this tip, we saw Betty, an inexperienced administrator with limited IBM EMQ skills, quickly create 116 queue definitions. There were 29 queue definitions that were propagated to 4 different queue managers through the import-export feature of the BMC Middle Management, BMM. Through the user console of BMM, she was quickly able to verify the results on all 4 queue managers. This included accessing the audit information captured for each queue created on each queue manager. Alternatively, Fred, the Acme IBM MQ administrator, could have utilized the BMM user console to perform the activity himself and realize an increase in his efficiency. Thus, an IBM MQ administrator has the choice of either delegating or utilizing the BMM user console himself to realize increased productivity. One week after the IBM MQ queue managers were made available, problems were discovered during the initial testing of the government payment application, which required numerous changes. Among these changes were modifications to 3 attributes of the government payment application queues. First, there was a 50% increase in the size of messages that can be placed in the government payment application queues from 16K to 24K. All application queues must be able to hold up to 10,000 messages. Finally, as a default, the messages were to be placed on the queues as persistent. Fred and Barney gave this assignment to Betty partially due to her impressive performance in using the BMC middleware management. There were still time pressures involved here as well. According to the contract with the federal government, the application is to be made available within 3 weeks from today. The project is now 1 week behind schedule. Betty is an intern from the local college with limited experience with IBM MQ. A request came in, which Fred assigned to Betty. The request is to modify 3 attributes of all the queues that are accessed by the government payment application, which is currently in development. After discussing the details of the assignment, Betty returned to her desk, where she logged into the administrative component of BMC Middleware Management, BMM. She has access to all the non-production queue managers to do administrative activity. There are currently 4 of the queue managers that are being accessed during the development of the government pay application. She accesses the queue manager specifically for the development of that application. Accesses the queues. Now, all of the queues that are being used currently by the application are local queues. She has a list of 29 of them on each of the 4 queue managers for 116 queue definitions that have to be changed. Instead of going through and modifying each queue, she is going to utilize the Manage Objects feature of BMM. Here, she will indicate the command she's going to use to alter the local queue, specify the connections to the queue manager, and be able to quickly access the queues, access for the base reference so that she has a definition to bring up and specify what she wants to change. First, change the default persistence so that all the messages on the queue will go as a persistent message as a default. Because of some changes, extra requirements from the government, the size of the messages have increased from 16K to 24K. We need to increase the number of messages that can be held on the queue to 10,000. We essentially implement the changes. We see underneath the status that there were changes made to the queue managers involved, 29 definitions to each. Betty can go back in and look at the local queues. We can see just from the initial display that we have changed the depth of the queue to 10,000, the maximum messages that can fit in to 24K. The default persistence is persistent. An alternative way, which Betty could verify, is to look at the audit logs. We're going to look at things that happen. We can set up a time limit so we can limit what we view because there's been a lot of activity. Here we see we have modified a number of queues. First, on the production queue manager, or will be, the System Queue Manager, the Development Queue Manager, and the Test Queue Manager. We can further go in and see exactly which attributes were changed, including the before and after values. This way, Betty, with limited skills, was quickly able to make changes to all 116 queues, 29 on each of the 4 queue managers. In this tip, we saw Betty modify 3 properties of 116 IBM MQ queues across 4 queue managers through the Manage Objects feature of the BMC Middleware Management, BMM. Betty is an inexperienced intern at the Acme Corporation with limited IBM MQ skills. Betty used 3 different techniques to verify the alteration of the queue properties. This included accessing the audit information recorded by BMM for the changes made to each queue.
Thank you, Barry, for summarizing the use case, showing the power of mass management of middleware objects with BMC Middleware Management. And thank you for joining us for this webinar. I hope you all enjoyed the webinar and picked up some new ideas on how Transcendence IT and BMC Middleware Management can help you succeed in managing your middleware environment. Before bringing this webinar to a close, I would like to talk with you a little bit about next steps on how you can get started using BMC Middleware Management to help you drive efficiency and reliability into your middleware environment. We would be more than happy to provide you with a custom demo of your specific middleware use cases. Please give us a call to schedule your demo now. Some of you are using older versions of the products, or some of you may be new to the solution. An excellent way to learn the powerful capabilities of BMC Middleware Management would be to sign up for a formal training course. Transcendence IT sells and delivers a 4-day course that provides each student with the labs and lectures for a solid foundation in middleware monitoring and administration. This official BMC software training for middleware management can be delivered remotely or on site, whatever makes the most sense for your business. You can also use your BMC software learning credits to pay for the course. Be sure to reach out to us and schedule your training today. Another way to kickstart your journey into middleware excellence might be through the use of professional services. We have deep expertise in implementing BMC Middleware Management. With our help, it does not take long to get the product installed, up, and productive. For standard deployment, to install the product, deploy monitoring agents, and make administrative connections, create dashboards, events, and policies can be done for 20 queue managers in about 2 weeks. For large-scale and complex deployments that may include custom integrations along with other activities such as event migrations from other platforms, this type of engagement would need to be scoped to your specific needs. Please feel free to contact us for a proposal. Last but not least is a popular package offering we call the Teach to Fish package, which self-enables your team for long-term success. Teach to Fish starts out by building the foundation of your team with 4 days of formal training. This foundational knowledge in place, your team enters into a formal mentor-protege relationship with the Transcendence IT team. We work together to deploy the solution, then we fine-tune the solution with your specific policies, events, and other requirements specific to your environment. Once the implementation work is complete, our engagement as a mentor is not over. We dedicate 2 hours a week for a month after the deployment for anything your team needs our help for, then 2 hours per month for a quarter, and then 2 hours per quarter ongoing for the unforeseeable future. Transcendence IT is committed to being your partner for life. Be sure to contact us to learn more about this partnership opportunity.